G'day fellas, and welcome to a coaching video. This is something that I would normally be posting on my Patreon, something that is normally exclusive to Patreon, but in this circumstance, I've decided to actually post this on the main channel, simply because after reviewing the content, I decided this is probably really beneficial for the entire Age of Empires community, so I'm going to post it up for you guys. If you'd like to see more coaching content, obviously I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find it on Patreon. And other than that, let's get into it. There's a couple of really hard and fast rules that you need to be following if you're playing 4v4 games. So, number one, all right, and we'll get into the game. Maybe we should get into the game first, and then we'll talk about the hard and fast rules. But these are rules that I have followed for a long time playing Age of Empires. So back when I used to play Age of Empires 3, my favorite game mode, literally my favorite game mode, was a game mode in Age of Empires 3 called 3v3 RDM. Means 3v3 random, and basically you get 6 people in a lobby and they have random teams, question mark, like that. Now you might get some people that are better than other people and some people who are worse, so you might team up like a low person with a high person to try and even it out, but essentially it's just random. And this was solo queue before solo queue even existed in like League or Dota or anything like that. So this concept's been around for a while. So if you're one of these guys, and you guys have probably seen the series on YouTube that I'm doing at the moment, which is Solo Queue to Conk 3, to see whether it's actually possible. But essentially, you've got to come in with a mindset that you have to be the carry. That's it. And I know that some people might see that as a toxic mindset, but the reality is, throughout these games, the only constant is you. The only thing that you can change is how you play. There's no point in getting upset at your allies. There's no point in getting upset at your enemies because they did something lame. Focus on what you can do and focus on how you can get better. So in saying that, you have to be the carry. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that if you're in Lloyd Boy's position right now, okay, he's playing in the pocket. Let's say Lloyd Boy opens up with like some really, oh my God, look at that minimap. I tell you what, this is part of the reasons why I don't like 4v4s. That's crazy. I mean, that makes it look a little bit more manageable, but I tell you what, that's just chaos. This is where I wish there was like a filter, man. Can you just remove berries, remove deer? I don't want to see it. I'll look for them on my screen. Like, oh, there they are. Throw them out there. That is crazy. So let's say Lloyd Boy, he invests resources. Let's say he says, all right, guys, I am going to go for an all-in camel or archer and horseman rush. And he does that, and he does that with red, all right? And he looks to go and attack pink. So because it's a team game, what's going to happen is pink's allies are going to come and help defend him. And the chance of that rush working are pretty low. And on top of that, Lloyd Boy hasn't really done anything to secure his team a stronger position. Now, of course, the argument would also be that, well, Drongo, he might have taken this player out. And yeah, he may have taken this player out. But just remember, like, even if you kill all the landmarks, the player's still in the game. They can still take their villages into the corner and slowly build up a new base and come back, right? Like, and you've got to think about the cost, right? Because if these 3 players have all gone 2TC or Fast Castle, then you've got yourself a problem. So it's about being the carry. And so what I would hope that Lloyd Boy does here, playing the Abbasid, is he looks to say to his team, hey guys, I'm going to carry today. And what that means is going for more than one town center or going for trade. Now on this map, trade is not going to be the best. You can see the trading post has spawned towards the center of the map rather than towards the edge of the map. So trade is not going to be as efficient. That doesn't mean you can't trade. You can always put the trade or the market in the corner and still trade to it. In fact, this is actually pretty good for Lloyd Boy because he could put his House of Wisdom here and use that as the market. But in saying that, actually doesn't. Oh, actually, it does work because he gets the 3 traders, but the 3 traders are gonna have to walk, so it doesn't work. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the number one rule is you need to be the carry. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's the bottom line. So if you're coming to me and saying, hey, Drong, I need some tips on some team game tips, give them to me. I would say you need to be the carry. Pick a civilization that you can carry with. Now, there's different ways you can carry. As an example, if you play the French, what if there's a knight in this player's base, and 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 you're killing villagers on 4 different bases? Well, you could be carrying in that regard as well. But how good is your micro? Do you think you can really keep up with 4 knights? Do you think that you're going to be able to maintain the ability to keep them all safe and yet still doing damage? That's a pretty big ask. I don't even think I could do that with 1 knight, let alone 4. the safest option you've got for carrying the game is picking a really good late game civ, a civilization like the Abbasid dynasty, like the Chinese, like the English. And that's why we see them picked so often in these team games. You can see 4 Chinese, 2 English, and an Abbasid, 7 really good late game civs, and 1 not so good late game civ, but very good early game civ. So that's essentially it. That's our team game perspective. Now, let's focus on Lloyd Boy. The first 5 minutes has been about more general stuff for team games, but let's focus on Lloyd Boy and let's see what he does right. Let's see what he does wrong, and let's get into it. All right, so let's speed it up. A little bit of idle time right there. Now, Lloyd Boy, once again, I'm going to assume that the build order that you're using is a build order that you've found from a professional on AoE4 World. For anybody who doesn't know, you go over to AoE4world.com, come up the top here, click watch, and then you're going to change the civilization of the civ that you want. Make sure you change the rating range to above 1600, and then you're going to click on one of these little streams right here. So we might click on, as an example, Snooper. He played a game here against, looks like, is that Louis MT? And it looks like he beat him. And so this here is going to be Snooper playing against the Rus, and you can essentially just watch his perspective and see what he does early on in the game. So make sure you take advantage of that and write down the things that he's doing. Like, okay, 2 vills to wood, 1 villager. And I already recognize this build order. So Lloyd Boy, you're doing the right thing. So good stuff. Keep it up. If I'm not mistaken, I think this build order might actually be the build order that Sainch has. So this is, this is the one that I actually covered on my channel. Sainch is, I mean, that was a really nice build order that he had. So it looks like House of Wisdom, you're thinking about putting it here, maybe? Which isn't a bad spot. Though I think you do put it on wood in this build order, don't you? But anyway, so far so good, right? Like, I'm not seeing anything crazy. I'm not seeing anything bad. Like, everything is looking really, really good so far. Yep, there it is. So I think that vill, is it this vill that comes out and goes onto this? I know that there's like some, there we go. Yeah, all right, now we're talking. Age up comes through. Now, the question... we had a lot of idle... What were these vills? Did you try and cash in and you were a little bit early? Oh, Lloyd Boy. That's okay. All right, so Lloyd Boy going to go into the economic wing straight away. So this is a really safe bet, okay? Especially because he hasn't found the trading post, right? Like, the way that trading works is the further away it is, the greater the gold income comes in. And now I know a lot of people be like, but Drongo, you're walking further. Yeah, that's true. But if you were to take a trade route and then measure it, and then double it, and then measure that, you'd find that the one that you doubled the length of would have a greater return for every second that you invested in it compared to the first one. So it does scale depending on the distance of the map, but also the length. So it just trust me, all right? Just trust me, all right? Trust me. Anyway, so this is a really safe option. It's a guaranteed way that you're going to be able to secure an economy. Now, the best thing, so in the pocket position, let's talk a little bit about positions as well. You're playing in the pocket, which is the safe position, right? There's 2 pockets in 4v4, so your enemy's got 2 pockets, you've got 2 pockets, and then there's 2 flanks, which are the edges. Now, typically the flanks are the ones that are like, hey, you guys, you got to be careful. You got to be the ones defending yourself. In Age of Empires 2, it gets even a bit crazier compared to Age of Empires 4. In Age of Empires 2, it's the flanks go for archers and the pockets go for cav. In AoE 4, it's a bit different. It's kind of like, you do whatever you want. But general rule is like, you're further from your enemy, so you've got more time, basically, if they look to attack you. So in saying that, I would be, genuinely, if I was playing right now in your position, Lloyd Boy, I would probably be going to like 4 TCs and then making units. You know what? I probably even wouldn't be doing that. I'd probably go like 4 TCs into Fast Castle, into like mass camel riders. Like, it might seem like a joke, but I guarantee you, it's the way to work. So anyway, let's keep on watching, keep on playing. The main threat, honestly, that you're going to have here are French Knights. Like, really, we talked about it a bit earlier. If he does look to try and hit you, I mean, the thing is, when it comes to town centers, right, like, you're going to be putting a town center on your stone, and then you're going to be putting town centers on your gold, and then you put a town center on your wood as well. So you're even really not that threatened by a knight, because I think that your first TC should be up by the time the knight gets here, unless he does like a super early age up. Let's check on him. Crickets. 9 vills at 4 minutes. School of Cavalry. All right, you better watch. You better watch out, Lloyd Boy. Lloyd Boy, I'm sure you can appreciate the same way I can that is not the most efficient build order for the French. All right, we've got a little bit of villager idle time right here coming through. And, of course, going straight onto the stone outcropping. Going to be looking to get enough resources here for Fertile Crescent. So far, so good, Lodbo. Like, you're playing this really well. And I just want to say, right, like, whenever I see people playing well like this, it makes it much easier for me to go on into the game and to find bigger things, right? Because often when I'm doing coaching, even of people at the gold level and the platinum level, one of the main things I tell them is, hey, go into a skirmish game and practice this build order like 10 times. I don't need to tell you that. I can see everything that you're doing right now. Perfect, mate. So thank you for doing that, because I can 100% tell that you have watched coaching before, that you have watched, you know, my videos, and I can see like the beginnings here. I've got shivers down my spine. That's how good I'm feeling about this game. So anyway, I know that you lose, and I know we've got a bit of idle time here, but look, it's not a big deal. All right, there we go. All the upgrades coming through. Beautiful stuff. Very, very well done. And so now we're, as I mentioned before, like our main threat here is like, so our biggest threat is a Chukunu Ram timing push, or a knight. So, oh my god, look at that Barbican. Talk about between two ferns. Look at that. Wow, okay. That's an interesting Barbican. You know, I would have just preferred a wall there, but sure. I mean, because the problem that you're going to have is like, what happens if the knights come and hit your stone? Now you can't gather stone. I mean, this is me foreshadowing. Do we see the knight coming through yet? Is he aged up? He's aged up. Scout. There's no knight on the way. There's the first knight in queue. Bit hard to see on this map. Anyway, it's the French player I'm worried about. So another thing to note is we should be scouting our threats. Now, what are our threats right now? So our main threats are not necessarily early game threats, but mid game threats. So for me, the biggest thing is like Chinese, right? Like the biggest threat is the Chinese. So if we take a look, so I can see that you've spotted someone over here. You've spotted the beginnings of a base over here as well. I don't think you've spotted, there's the first Chinese player. You haven't spotted him, but you kind of spotted his area. Now, obviously there's 4 people on the team, right? But the thing is, we need to know what they're up to, because basically the idea is we always want to be staying ahead of them. And it's hard to know how much ahead we should be if we don't know where they are. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I mentioned there's a couple ways that we lose this game. Number one is like through a ram push, and number 2 is getting outscaled by the Chinese. We need information. So this is a really critical point, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to draw it in as our first point of improvement. It's scouting our threats. So the main thing that we're going to be looking for is for stone. That's our big thing. We're looking for the Chinese players' stone, and we want to know how much stone they've taken off. Generally, 350 stone off is going to mean 1 TC, 700 stone is going to mean 2 TC. Those are the big things that you're looking for. And if the Chinese player doesn't have any stone taken off his stone outcroppings, then you need to be a little bit worried, because there's a chance that they may all in you. Now, I don't know what the 4v4 meta is like at the moment, but my suspicions is it's probably more orientated towards booming than it is towards Chukunu all-ins, but it's still a threat. So we need to make sure that we respect that, because he could wipe you off the map, off the face of the earth, with a Chukunu timing push, especially as the Abbasid. Like, you get completely destroyed by a Chukunu. So that's the main thing. So I would just be saying to you, come back in here, bring your scout. I mean, your scout's just like kind of chilling at the moment, but yeah, about like the 5-minute mark, we need to be making sure we do that. So you're going to throw down a town center. It looks like you're going on the berries here. So playing it a little bit differently. I mean, you got so much food here. I wouldn't be too fussed about the berries, especially in team games. Remember that there's more sheep that spawn per person. So there's nothing that stops you from putting down this town center on the stone. And then this kind of guarantees that your stone is going to be safe. You don't have to worry about protecting it, because the town center is protecting it. But yeah, that's probably the best way. This is always like a solid expansion point. So I would just say I would disagree with this town center placement. The goal here is to gather food, or to secure food. We've already got 15 sheep. Plenty of food for now. Don't worry. So yeah, and in addition to that, it's kind of like far forward, right? Like there's a potential threat in there. And look what it is. Well, if it wasn't good old foreshadowing coming in handy. Well, would you look at that? Wouldn't you have loved that Barbican over here on the stone right now? The stone's the most important part. You don't care about gold. Gold can be easily gathered by our Imperial officials. Oh my lord. You know what? I love to see it, because it just shows that I'm right. So this is good information here as well. So we see 2 vills on stone. This is kind of like pointing towards oh gosh, that's definitely a dead scout right there. But that's like pointing towards the desire for a town center, but not necessarily like a rushing of a town center. But you do see like you see a stable. And that's a small piece of information, but the stable to me is like, okay, you know, maybe we can drop 1 Rax and just make some spears. But we don't need to overreact. We don't need to go crazy. We want to keep adding in town centers at this point. We want to add in our 3rd TC. Honestly, like 4, maybe even 5 town centers. I know that might seem crazy, but I promise you, the idea is to get to max vills as quickly as possible without dying. Let me say that again. The idea is to get to max vills as quickly as possible without dying. This is why it's so important for us to limit test, okay? And what I mean by limit test, let me see if I can work it. Or not limit test, but rather, apologies for the flashbang. So think about it like from the perspective of your enemy, okay? So they're sitting on 1 town center, right? And so for us to outscale them, we need 2 town centers. So, you know, the game comes in. Let's do us in red. Okay, so we're just going to outscale them. We're going to jump up to 2 TCs. And now we're outscaling them. But the problem is when they jump up to 2 TCs, you know, maybe it's at this point, and keep in mind that they're Chinese, so their 2 TC isn't actually 2 TCs, it's actually 2.66 TCs. Okay, now they've jumped up ahead. Let me go a little bit further there. Okay, well, let's just call it that. And so now they've jumped ahead of us. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're jumping back ahead and that we're eclipsing them. We're getting ahead. It's actually probably a little bit closer, like somewhere around there. The point is that we just don't want to be going willy-nilly TCs, right? Like we don't want to be going super crazy on the TCs. We essentially just want to be matching them, okay? And then they're going to come up to the 3 TC mark, which will actually take them up to 4 TCs equivalent, and then you will do the same here with your TC. And then this is where you need to add a TC, and this is where Song Dynasty starts to pay off. But just remember, you've got Fertile Crescent, and then that's going to keep you ahead. So that's 1 TC baseline, 2 TCs, 3 TCs, 4 TCs, and then 5 TCs. And this is where, like, I'm genuinely serious when I say, like, you want to just spam out TCs. Especially in the pocket position. It's a really important position to do it. And so the reason why we want to scout our enemy, okay, is because let's say that our enemy wasn't actually doing this. And we just assumed that they were doing this. And so we added the town centers in, but we didn't confirm the stone. The stone is the most important part. So you know what happens? I'm going to write it for you right here. Jugunu all in. And you know when the Jugunu all in happens? It happens right here as you're adding in your 3rd TC. Right here. Okay, so you've gone, let me pull the pencil out. So 1st TC, up to the 2nd TC. There's your 3rd TC getting added in. And guess what? Battering rams come in at the front. And remember, there's 2 Chinese players here, so maybe it's both of them pushing you. So you got no chance in heck of holding this. That's the importance of scouting, because we need to know what our enemy's up to. So I would just say work on that scouting. All right. Let's continue moving. Continue moving forward. So far, I'm really liking the macro, though. Like, this is the best thing about early Abbasid macro, is you don't have to focus on gold or stone if you don't want to. It's just food and wood, and you can stay on food and wood for like 20 minutes, just adding in farms and collecting wood and just adding in more production. Horseman, spearman, archer, camel. It's really, really nice. So yeah, this is good production. One of the things to note with the Abbasid is like I like to put my production in the front of my base. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like as long as you've got enough room for the farms in the back, you'll be okay. But yeah, I mean, not necessarily in the front of your base, but like kind of around this part. But anyway, it's not a big deal. I think this is fine. Try and make it a little bit tighter, because you are going to run into a stage in this kind of like late game situation where you don't have enough space in your base. All right, next point, resources. We're 10 minutes into this game. We're doing a really good job with our villager production. And as a result, our economy is going crazy. So crazy that we've stacked up 1,100 resources, more than 1,100 resources stacked up right now. So now we've got the question, what do we do here? Now, obviously, we're pumping out units nonstop. We've got double horsemen in queue. We've got a single spear in queue. We're adding in more production, and this is the right play. But we also want to start thinking about the prospect of farms. Not that we need them at the moment, because we've got plenty of sheep here, but more production. And just balancing that out so that we have got, whether that means, you know, taking off villagers from food or from wood and sending them over onto the hunt. You know, maybe take 5 vills over there, build an outpost, build a mill, and there you go. You're all good. So think about that as a potential option for you. Now, I've talked about it immensely, but once again, we want more TCs, right? Like, 2 is great for a 1v1. Even in a 1v1, I'd be still saying go for 3 TCs. In a team game, 4 TCs is, I would call 4 TCs standard. 5 TCs is probably my goal. If you can hit, I don't know what the timings are, but I would imagine like 5 TCs before 12 minutes and not die, and you're fine. And the thing is, like, you want to be contributing units. This is where I think, like, maybe if a longer feudal age for you is the right call. But just like, look at what's happened in the early game, right? We're at the 11-minute mark right now. What's happened? Has your Chinese player on this flank died? Nope. Has this guy died down here? Nope. Has this guy died? Nope. Everyone's good, right? Like, up until this point, your impact on this game is 0. And that's because it's needed to be 0. You haven't, or rather because you haven't needed it to be any higher than 0. So my question is, instead of spending your, I mean, how much military do we have here? It doesn't say. You've got a huge military value. Let's check. Not huge, but 11 spears, 7 horsemen. So you're talking, 800 resources here, probably 1,000 resources there, and you're stacking up 2k. You could literally have like 9 TCs right now with Fertile Crescent. It's absolutely bonkers how crazy it is. And I know it might seem like a meme, but the idea is the sooner you hit max vills, and when I'm talking max vills, I'm talking 200, 200. Then you can start deleting vills, but the idea is that because your vills are so cheap, they pay themselves off so quickly, you can just get to 200, 200. You can sling resources to your allies, or you can make military. It really doesn't matter, but like maybe cap yourself at like 150 vills or something like that. You can always come down as you get later on in the game. Don't be afraid to delete villages. That's the thing. A lot of people will look at it and be like, Drongo, I can't delete villages. It's like, no, you can delete villages. They paid themselves off already. You invested 32 resources in them. They paid themselves off in like 20 seconds, bro. Don't worry. It's fine. Not 20 seconds, like a minute. It's fine. So yeah, don't worry about deleting them because they serve a purpose at a point in time, but you might need to use that population space for something else. So essentially my point is, up until this point in the game, and I suspect you're going to have a lot of games like this, you have not needed to do anything. So take advantage of that and say, I am going to make more villages. Once again, just... yeah, this is the safe route. Like, if you're Beastie would go to 200 vills and would still be able to carry. Well, I don't mean still be able to carry, but I mean Beastie would be able to go to 200 vills and make sure that he doesn't die, or make sure that his allies don't die. Whereas if we went to 200 vills, we don't know the balance just yet. So I would say go for like 5 TCs, but make units with it, right? Like this is a good amount of production, but double this. Aim for this in feudal. There's nothing that stops you from just making, like, go for feudal spears, phalanx, get your +1 upgrades, and make sure you get all your eco upgrades. And just, make it even a goal. Just be like, I'm going to stay in feudal for 15 minutes. And I'm just going to make lots of units and vills. Make that your goal. And that's a really solid goal. You don't need to go castle. You can deal with all the threats in castle age as the Abbasid. If your enemy's going knights, you make phalanx spears. If your enemy goes, into... I mean, you've already got camels, right? Like, you can literally handle all threats as the Abbasid. The Abbasid is one of those civs that you can stay feudal for 40 minutes. So, yeah. But, I mean, this is a nice little push coming in. But once again, so I'm just going to pull or break it down at this point. I just want to check in with everybody and see how the Vil count's doing. Because at this point, 15 minutes. So for anybody who doesn't know, 15 minutes is a benchmark for Chinese players. It used to be that you would have 100 Vils. Now it's 92. Now, I don't know where your allies are at. I don't know where you're at. Let's check. So 92 Vils. So at the moment, you would be behind 34 Vils, a Chinese player. Let's check your ally down on the bottom side here. He is a Chinese player. He's on 66 Vils. Your ally on the top side, he's on 55 Vils. And your ally underneath you, he's on 31 Vils. So at the moment, like, remember we talked earlier about being the carry? You're not being the carry. You've got the same Vils as everybody else. In fact, you've got less Vils than everybody else, with the exception of your English ally down here. Let's go check on the enemy, though. So we've got our French player who has got 35 Vils. Not doing the best, but he's playing French. Our Chinese player who's on 78 Vils. That is quite a lot. And he's going castle. He's got 1 TC, 2 CCs, 3 TCs. This is what I was talking about. And then let's check on the other Chinese player. And he is also trading 62 Vils. 1 TC is what I can see here with... What is this? Oh my god, what a meme lord. What an absolute... This is amazing. I don't think I've ever seen this, but like, why would you waste time trying to kill this? You know what I mean? Like, this, fair enough. Okay, I'll accept that. Like, that is hilarious. Okay. So he's on 62 vills, and then we check the pink guy, who's the guy that you're killing at the moment, who's going to be going for White Tower. He's on 47 vills. So overall, your team is up on vills, but remember, you're not carrying at this point. You might be carrying with military, but this is easy to shut down. This is not a big threat. I mean, there's a whole lot of Lancers in here, but obviously we've talked about this already. You've got Abbasid Spears. Now, I don't think you've got the counter, or I don't think you picked up the upgrades just... Oh, no, you do have Phalanx. Okay. So you got Phalanx, so you're able to defend this easily. But just remember, right, like you take down a landmark town center. This is not something that's like... This is not game winning at this point. We're 15 minutes into the game. If you were to take stock of how many town centers the enemy's got, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... 6 town centers. You've taken out 1 town center out of 6. That's not much. And that's why in team games, it's just so important to boom, because when you kill a town center, you're only killing such a small portion of the enemy's economy. All right, so let's check in. You've aged up. You started collecting gold. How are your upgrades going? Okay, not the best. Not the best. So yeah, I'm just gonna set like, and this is just a random goal, right? Like you don't need to observe this, but I would say just get in the habit of doing this. Don't click your castle age up until you've got all of your feudal upgrades. Every single one. I want to see all 4 of these upgrades. I want to see mining, lumber, get both of these upgrades, and get your horticulture upgrade. Because one of the things to note is these upgrades scale with your villager count. The more vills you have, the better these upgrades get. So when you forget these upgrades, you are hurting your economy massively. 61 vills at the moment. Obviously, that's going to keep climbing. But you get the point. So let's keep on rolling. Essentially, though, what I want you to do is become the carry. And to do that, make more town centers. Make more production. That's another thing. Like, you're doing well with 5 production facilities, but at this point, when your economy is absolutely balling, especially when you got like 5, 6 TCs, you're going to need 20, 30 production facilities, okay? Just put them all in a control group. And the thing is, like, make whatever unit you want. In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you a goal. In the feudal age, make Horseman Spear. That's it. Horseman Spear, very easy to micro. Very good unit combination here is the Abbasid. You get to castle, make Camel Riders. No, Camel... You know, I'm kind of tempted to be like, make crossbows and men-at-arms, because it's a really good unit combo. And then when you get Imperial, just make Camel Riders and Camel Archers. And that's it. And that's how you carry the game. And essentially, when it comes to late game, so let's speed it up a little bit, because we'll just talk about late game situations and breaking through. Because that can be one of the hardest things, right? Like, you might not know how to break in an enemy's position in the late game, but there's actually a pretty easy way to do it. So what if I told you there was a way to go past the population limit? Would you believe me? You probably wouldn't. And I wouldn't believe me too. But there is. It's not really going above the population limit. But what you can do is think about it from this perspective, right? Like, you hit 200. I'm going to speed this game up, but I'm going to reduce the volume so you can just listen to my talking instead of the Abbasid villagers that are dying. And they are dying. So, what was I going to say? Hold on. What was I going to talk about? Don't tell me I forgot it. Ah, yes, I remembered. So your maximum cap on population is 200. You can have any combination of villages and military that you like. 150 vills, 50 military. 50 vills, 150 military. But there's no cap on the amount of keeps that you can make. And that is how you can make a really strong late game push through keeps. Because it enables you to bypass that mechanic of population and say, oh, actually, I'm gonna have, 4 keeps over here or 3 keeps over here, and that's going to act as my offense in this position. All right, so macro is getting a little bit out of whack here. Once again, we're sitting on 69 vills, which is a nice amount of vills to have, but definitely not our goal. Our goal should be 130 vills. That's our baseline goal. That's our 20-minute goal. Okay, but that is, you can go higher than that. But don't stop making vills until we get to that point. And so you can see, in a perfect world, we always want to be at 200 pop, right? Like, we want to get to 200 pop as soon as possible. So that's another thing. So, and it just comes down to having more production, right? Like, at the moment, you've got more. How much production are we talking about here? We've got 9 production buildings. We're 24 minutes through the game. That should be 29 production buildings at this point. And you want to make them closer to the enemy the longer the game goes on. because your economy is going to be crazy good. So you want to try and get those production buildings as close as you can to the enemy so your reinforcements are arriving sooner. But I'm starting to see a trend as to who is carrying this game right now. It's the Chinese players. It's the Chinese players. I feel like they're taking over the game, the Lancers in particular. Now, this guy was only 1 TC initially. He did add in a second town center. But this is definitely a point for concern. And now we're reaching this point in a team game that's really important. That's walls. Walls, walls, walls. Now, we always want to start with palisade walls, but then we want to add in stone walls. Really important. Now, one of the things that you can do is if you've got palisade walls like this, which are on the front line, and there's not really a good option for you to drop down stone walls, don't be afraid to delete these when your villages are nearby. So you want to pull your vills up, grab like 5 vills, bring them up. Once they go idle, you come back to them, delete the wall, and then get the vills to build stone walls. Stone wall here. And remember, we want to build our stone walls like an onion, or rather, we want to build our walls like an onion. And we want to protect ourselves. Obviously, we want to try and protect our allies as well. But at the end of the day, we only care about ourselves. We only care about our economy because we don't want our allies pinging us like, hey, I need a gate here. Hey, I need a gate here. Hey, can you repair this wall? Hey, can you repair that? Like, you don't want to deal with that. You just want to know that my villages are going to be safe. And as a result, it means that you stonewall here. You stonewall all the way down here. You build a gate for your allies. Maybe they want to do trade on the backside, something like that. But you just stonewall for yourself. That's it. But yeah, at this point in the game, I mean, we can see scores, but it's a little bit hard to add up. You've got, I mean, yeah, like look at that. You've got 2 guys that are 8.6k, 5.6k. On your team, there's 5.6k, which is your Chinese guy down to the south, who is on 1 TC, 2 TC. Is it just 2 TCs? Yeah, I think just the 2 TCs. Interesting Imperial Academy positioning here. This is... The funny thing about this positioning on the Imperial Academy is you can't actually... Even if you're collecting these off cooldown, you'll never be able to catch it. They produce too much gold for you to ever collect. This is something I actually fed back to the devs. It's a small thing, but it's for us China mains. Us ex-China mains, I guess you could say. It was an important thing. Anyway, I don't think there's too much more to add at this point. Oh, when it comes to... when it comes to breaking an enemy's stone wall. So here in this position, you can see we've got a huge stone wall. And how do we deal with this, right? Because we might be in the position where we've got stone walls up against their stone walls. How do we get through this? So I would say your first step that you want to be taking is a forward keep. You need to get your keep down because that's going to be able to protect your siege. So you want to bring all your military up with it. Forward keep down here. And then you can bring your bombards up and look to crack open a hole in that wall. Once you've cracked a hole open in that wall, if you've got any infantry, you can get them up on the wall. But often it's not needed. And once that hole is opened, you just go through with your cavalry and straight through into the back of the base. And what that's going to do is that's going to buy you time because they now need to track that cavalry. They need to run after that cavalry. And even if you send like 5 units, they're going to send their whole army. That's just the way that it works. The brain is very funny how it works like that. We're not good at managing lots of different things at once. And so as a result, we're going to chase that to the ends of Earth. So I would recommend, come through, drop the keep, and then start breaking through the walls. And as you push up towards the wall, that's when you can drop more keeps, drop another keep on the other side of the wall, and then you're going to be breaking through. So that's the best way that you can approach a situation like this. Other than that, I hope that this has been insightful for you. At the end of the day, the most important thing is making town centers and being the carry. Other than that, I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.